the school. You may want to also ask how successful can you give me some examples of how teachers at brand new teachers to your school have been successful and what you guys did to support them in the past. And then in terms of, I know you had another question in there about not just support, but also commitment to the school. I think that's one of the reasons why you should read your agreement and talk with your prospective administrator about what those expectations are. Because I know as a first-year teacher, I knew that being at Long Beach Jordan High School, I was focused more on instruction, and they never asked me to do anything. I had the choice to do those extra things. Like, I had some extra time, and during my conference period happened to be the strings class with the orchestra, so I played the violin. So I talked to the music teacher and said, hey, can I help out with the strings class during my conference period? I had the choice. And so you will want to know whether or not there's a choice there, or whether you're being asked to, I'm hiring you because I want you to coach the rugby team. And that's what you're going to do. That's different, and that's not giving you a choice, and that's a huge commitment that you may not want to commit to when you don't know what teaching is going to be like.
Yeah, and you'll also get paid for any extra curricular stuff. So if you're tutoring after school, if the requirement outside the contract says, like, we would like for you to volunteer or to tutor an hour or two after the school bell, you will get compensated for that, right? So it's not something that you're not getting compensated.
And again, a lot of that should be spelled out in any agreements that you have with the school. So.
Cool. Perfect. Thank you so much. Let's switch. A lot of questions coming in. Any unique advice you can offer to core members teaching SPED? As you know, our cohort of SPED teachers is really big. We have a lot of people here and watching virtually that would like to know, like, some advice that you would give core members in special ed.
I think core members going into special ed have a unique opportunity to have a very structured way of getting to know students and their parents by participating in a lot of individualized education plans and meetings. So in a lot of ways, I think the advice I would have is to take advantage of those times and opportunities to interact with students with their parents. I think I think it goes without saying that as a special ed teacher, you're going to be faced with additional compliance and reporting requirements that other traditional teachers don't face when it comes to, because of the special ed requirements around individualized education plans and tracking that and monitoring that. A lot of special ed teachers are being asked now to co-teach with general ed teachers on a more regular basis as well. And so there's going to be a lot more interactions with others. So I guess one big tip that I would have for any special ed teachers is that be ready to have to compromise and to collaborate with other adults. Yes, you're going to be working with kids too, but a lot of your job, much more of your job, will also be about interacting with other adults and interacting with parents and teachers as well. So it's a big shift, and it is very different. And working with some really wonderful special ed teachers, I can see that you kind of have to recognize that you're going to be doing some paperwork on the side, but the ones that I've seen who are the more successful special ed teachers are those who are really able to collaborate with others, to really work on your listening skills, work on your responses, being diplomatic, really working with your administrators and getting to know your administrators to find support as well. So a lot of it comes down to the adult perspective, which I don't think that they prepare a lot of special ed teachers to do very well. At least I'm not aware of that at sort of the teacher credentialing level, because a lot of the courses are focused on how are you instructing special ed students, and maybe a little bit on how you're interacting with others. So that's probably my biggest tip.
Cool. So let's open it up to in-person. Wow, a lot of hands. Let's go with Jackie.
This is a follow-up. For those who will be teaching special education or bilingual special education, how do charters cater to those educators versus districts?
In terms of supporting those educators?
Yeah, in general.
Okay, so the question was, how do charters provide support to special ed teachers? How's that different than traditional public schools? Charter schools in California still have to follow a lot of the same rules and regulations that traditional public schools do. So a lot of the supports end up being pretty similar. receive similar training on, especially in LA Unified, on the standard teacher reporting system around special ed students. But each charter organization is going to have a different sort of support structure for supporting their special ed teachers. And some of that will be based at the school site level. And so I'm not sure how to answer that besides saying it varies from school to school and charter to charter. But most charter organizations, the large ones that Leo showed earlier, most of those large charter organizations, they do have a director of special ed and somebody who's overseeing professional development for special ed teachers. And so that's definitely a question I would ask as a teacher going into a school, especially a special ed teacher, what that looks like and what the special ed program looks like at that charter school.
Cool. So I think Draco, you had a question, right?
Yeah, I wanted to ask your thoughts on the perspectives of families and parents regarding charters. Since it seems like a few years ago in the LA education landscape, there was a huge push, for parents to try to get their kids into different charter schools and with a lottery system. Has that changed over the years, or how's that different?
So the question was around the perspectives of parents and students on charter schools in LA and what that looks like. I think it's the initial first charter schools that were opened in LA had a lot of demand because there weren't very many of them. And as you saw from a lot of Leo's data up there earlier, the number of charter schools in LA has grown by a lot. And in some areas, there's one almost on every corner, or they're across the street from each other, or they're sharing a campus with a district school. So there's a lot more of them. Honestly, I think the perspectives of parents and students on charter schools isn't that different than what was before, in terms of the fact that they know that it's an option that they have, that they know that there are some advantages and disadvantages to charter schools, especially since they're smaller schools, and especially since a lot of them are high schools. I know that as a high school principal, I knew as a high school charter principal that I couldn't really compete with the local district schools that had big comprehensive athletic programs and lots more extracurricular activities. Parents and students are aware of some of those choices, and they will choose accordingly. I think the quality of the charter schools is important as well, but the number one reason why parents and students, why parents pick a charter school for their child, the number one reason tends to be safety. And that comes from the fact that a lot of the charter schools tend to be smaller than the district schools, so there's more of a personalized atmosphere to them. But a lot of the district schools have changed in size as well. LA Unified, over the past 10 years, 8 to 10 years, has built quite a few facilities. It's one of the largest facilities construction projects in the country, and so even a lot of the LA Unified schools now are very, very small schools. I just came from the middle school today, which had 400 kids in the middle of South LA. And I have quite a few other district schools that I supervise that are 300, 400, 500 kids as well. So a lot of that has changed, and some of that is in response to charter schools as well. And so originally when charters were created was this idea of competition, and through competition you get ideas that get stolen from one competitor to another, and I think the district has responded by changing some of the way that schools are structured in the district also.
So this kind of goes into that last part of your answer, but this question comes virtually through live stream. Do you find there's a difference in community and parental involvement between district and charters? Like, can you explain a little bit what the community and family support or involvement in charters compared to districts are?
Yeah. I think so it's important to keep in mind that a charter school is an open enrollment choice school. So parents have to choose that school for their child. And so that there's a lot of school choice literature out there that really does talk about how those parents who are willing to make the effort are going to be slightly more willing to participate in the school. And so you do see a lot of a little bit more involvement on the parent side in charter schools because the parents have made the choice to send them to the school. A lot of charter schools actually have parent involvement requirements as well, or expectations that parents volunteer a certain number of hours. There are some benefits and drawbacks to that as well. But again, remember what I said before. Parents generally choose their schools for safety first. And academics are usually on the list, but it's not, especially in the areas that we serve in LA, tends to be, safety tends to be the #1 priority for their children, knowing that the local district schools might have a reputation. And so there might be generally more involvement at the charter level, but it's still not light years different than district school. But district schools tend to struggle with that also. So, but it depends on the district school and the charter school.
Cool. What's your name?
Mark.
Mark. Go ahead.
I have a bit of a two-part question.
Sure.
The first part is, how do the students at charter schools compare to the students at other schools? Are they more involved? Are they more focused on education and academics, or is it a consistent mix that would compare to district school? And secondly, do charter schools offer an advantage in helping to reach the students that might be struggling in a district school environment and do better at a charter school, or do they kind of focus on students that would prefer to be in a charter school?
I guess the short answer to that, it would be, so the question was around the differences between charter and district schools in terms of the students, right? And I guess my short answer to that, I hate to be glib about it, but it's that it depends. It depends on the charter school and it depends on the district school. In my experience, having kind of gone directly from charters to district schools in the same neighborhoods as some charter schools, kids are kids. They're the same. And remember what I said before, parents choose the school for the students. So oftentimes charters get students who don't want to go to the school, but their parents are making them go to that school. So you can imagine if you're supervising and teaching in a high school, those kids are perfectly aware of where all their kids went, where all their friends went to school, at the local neighborhood school, and oftentimes you get a lot of pushback there. So kids are kids. It doesn't matter where they're at. I do think that it's not about charter or district, it's about school size when it comes to the amount of support students can receive. And that's why a lot of the smaller schools are able to provide a lot more personalization, where the adults really get to know those students well in order to provide them with support, know when those kids need extra help. And district and charter schools have different structures, like advisory classes, where teachers are asked to supervise a group of students and kind of be their homeroom teacher and advisor and kind of help them through things and to really get to know them well. And I love that part of our school, and I loved doing that as a teacher as well, because it was another class, and yes, it was more planning, but it really was an opportunity to get to know the kids without having all these standards and expectations around testing, but really just to be able to sit down and say, hey, let's talk about college today. Okay, what do you guys know about college? So I think it depends. But kids are kids. They're the same.
Cool. We're now entering the lightning round of this presentation. So quick questions, quick answers, so we can get everyone their answers. So go ahead, Emmanuel.
What's the reason for the discrepancy in ADA between charter schools and district schools?
The discrepancy in ADA between
What's ADA?
Average daily attendance. Well, I think what you're asking more is the per pupil funding, right?
Exactly.
Not ADA. So per pupil funding between district and charter schools. The main reason for that comes from the way the legislation was written at the state of California, and so charter schools receive a categorical block grant for their funds. I know this is going to get all technical, but the reason why is the charters get a block grant that combines a bunch of revenue streams into one and gives it to the charters to use however they want. But the revenue streams that charters get aren't the same don't encompass everything that the districts get. But the districts have to apply for those streams, and those extra streams have a lot more strings attached to them, which may or may not be in the interest of the charter schools to apply for. The other piece is less about the per pupil funding and more about what the charters have to spend their money on. And charters have to actually spend their money on their facilities as well, in terms of actually rent and paying the mortgage on their buildings. Whereas most districts, they have bond funding and other revenue streams that pay for that. So the per pupil funding that districts get are the facilities costs are pretty minimal because they're just working on their maintenance costs rather than actually paying for rent. And you can imagine a charter school's rent budget, it's a pretty sizable portion of their budget, 20%, 25% of their budget maybe going towards just the facility. The rest goes into the instructional program and salaries and whatnot, whereas districts don't have that. But there are some programs at the state level that they provide extra funding for charter schools in that respect and reimbursements.
Cool. This question comes virtually through a live stream. Difference between workload in charter and district, number of classes taught, different subjects taught. Are there differences there? Like preps and all that?
So I would say it depends again. And so there are some, I hate to respond that way, but it's sort of the truth. This is why it's important when you talk to your principal to ask these questions around what am I going to teach, especially at the secondary level, middle school, high school. Generally, smaller schools, you're going to probably have more preps than a larger school. If you're going to a larger middle school or high school, you may only have 1 or 2 preps, whereas in a small school, you might have 3, maybe 4 preps.
And preps are?
The number of different types of classes that you're teaching. So as a science teacher in a small school, I might be teaching biology, I might be teaching chemistry, I might be teaching an advisory class, I might be teaching a KC prep class, depending on what my credential is, of course. Whereas in a large comprehensive school as a science teacher, I had 2 preps. I taught biology, and I taught chemistry at Jordan, and I taught integrated science, and that was it. So it really depends. It depends on the school. The number of periods is really dependent on the school and the district. In LA Unified, out of my 7 schools, I have schools that have 6 periods, 7 periods, 8 periods.
Can you give numbers behind the number of students when you say a small school versus a large school?
Yeah. In general, so most of my experiences with secondary schools, so small schools at the secondary level tend to be, in my mind, ballpark, not kind of research based, but 500 or less is pretty small. Elementary schools tend to be smaller anyways, so that may not be the case. And in LA Unified, they really, as I mentioned before, they built so many new facilities that they have very few really comprehensively large high schools anymore. And even their elementary schools, there's only 1 or 2 that I know of that are still on a year-round calendar, but most of the schools are single-track, smaller schools. So when I talk about large schools, I think of 2,000 to 3,000 kids, which there are still some of them out there.
All right, we have time for 2 more quick questions. Go ahead. Let's go Sarah, and then we'll go Tyler to end it.
If you were knowing what you know now, with the experience that you've had now, in our position, when you're now going to start and pick, be able to choose what kind of school that you go to, would you have a preference between charter and district school, or would you base it on the specific school?
I don't think I'd care if it was charter or district at this point. Because you're going to get the same experience in both. I think if I knew I wanted to stay in teaching, I probably would go to a district school just because of the union. And knowing that you go through your 2 years of probationary period and have tenure by the time you got out of TFA, that is a definite choice. But I think in terms of the school that a lot of it would actually depend a lot more on the school that I was working for, particularly the administrators and the teaching staff at the school site. I would be much more interested in learning more about that than whether it was district or charter, because I wouldn't go to a district school that I knew was pretty dysfunctional, and I could tell that the principal wasn't going to support me very much, or they didn't have any structure to support people, and they would just throw me in, versus a charter, which could have a great program, but the teachers are just on their own. So I mean, a lot of those same conditions, the teaching conditions and the support that you would get, I think that would matter to me much more.
And just so you know, about 85% of our placements are charter. So a lot of times that's who we partner with. So there's not as much choice as we would, think, and we just place you in schools where you're needed. Essentially, that's what we signed up for, right? But if you were a traditional route teacher and we're looking for then that would apply a little bit more. But I think we have time for a quick one. Go ahead, Tyler.
If you had to just pick one word, what's a common characteristic you see among successful first-year teachers?
That's 6 words right there. We need one.
Give me one sentence, just a common characteristic that you see in successful
In
first-year
successful first-year teachers, I see a lot of planning. Planning and organization. That's 2 words. They're the ones who are able to do it the best. You know, I think there are a lot of personal characteristics, you know, that lend themselves to that. But the teachers that I think of who I know have been successful, they are so well planned. It's ridiculous. But they're willing to, once those plans don't always work, they're willing to revise them.
All right. Wow, look at us. We're on time. I want to make sure everyone, let's give a round of applause to Derek. We've talked for a long time and answered a lot of questions, and I think people are leaving this room feeling a little bit more knowledgeable about schools, and so that was the goal here. Thank you so much. Hope to do it next year again. Free, right? Okay, good. We are a nonprofit. We don't have any. Thank you guys for coming out tonight. Thank you all for virtually participating via live stream and for sending your questions to Chelsea. I'm really excited about working with y'all during the hiring season. It's rapidly approaching. We're going to see you guys more often very soon, and we are gearing up, making sure our processes are set up to make you as successful as possible during hiring. So we're just really excited. We're happy that you're joining us. We're excited about the potential you have to make an impact here in LA, and this is really personal work for all of us on staff. We all taught or went to schools in LA, and we're all invested in you guys. So thank you guys for coming. This is a tradition because it's 2 years now that we're doing this. But I want everyone to come up. We're going to say hi to everybody via Ustream, and we're going to take a quick picture. Come on, let's do it. Get up.
Who takes a picture, Leo?
Oh, I'll take it. Go ahead.
You want me to take it?
No, we're good.
No,
I want the ED in there.
I want you in there.
Okay, we'll grab somebody from up.
Okay.
But I want to make sure everyone's in the screen. Look happy to be here. Jeez Louise. Thanks, Derek.
So good to see you. So good to see you. Good. I'm glad you're back too. A nice bright light. I don't know, how do you gonna tell us when we're all in the room?
Yeah, I'll let you know when you're all on the screen.
Okay, do we need to squish?
A little bit more, Lida, to your right.
I'm gonna stand behind Draco.
And then, yeah, Earl, perfect, right there. All right, wave hi to everybody. Hey! Cool, first time you guys meet each other. And we're gonna get a quick picture. Derek, go ahead, Derek, I want you in the photo. Don't worry about me, I'm in a lot of pictures. Go.
Will they fit in the, oh wait, this is just for the picture. I got
Yep.
it. All right.
1, 2, 3. Okay, I'm gonna use flash now. 1, 2, 3. One more, sorry. You guys are so pretty. There it is.
So pretty.
All right, with that, do not be shy about the churros. We have like 1 million in that box, and I'm not eating them all.